Everybody, it's Mike from Hear the Watchman, and on today's Watchman Report, we are going north to the other side of the border being that of Canada. And we're going to talk about some things going on in Canada right now. Yesterday, we were our London correspondent, and today we're going to talk to, hopefully, Canadian correspondents. We have at least one of them, Audrey, with us right now. We're hoping that Brad will be able to join up here in a little bit. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mike.
We want to talk, Audrey, a little bit about something very pressing in Canada, and that is a motion. It's called M-103. Can you explain to us what that's all about?
M-103, I took notes, I wrote it down so that I wouldn't mess the wording up. So I'm just gonna read what M-103 actually is and says. It's a non-binding motion, which means it's not put into law. The next step would be turning it into a bill and then voting on it and turning it into law. So as it stands now, M-103 says, and it was passed in March of 2017, so it is in the books now. The government should A, recognize the need to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear. B, condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systemic racism and religious discrimination, and take note of House of Commons petition E-411 and the issues raised by it. And C, request that the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage undertake a study on how the government could, 1, develop a whole of government approach to reduce or eliminate systemic racism and religion discrimination, including Islamophobia, in Canada, while ensuring a community-centered focus with a holistic response through evidence-based policymaking. And then 2, collect data to contextualize hate crime reports and to conduct needs assessments for impact communities, and that the committee should present its findings and recommendations to the House no later than 240 calendar days from the adoption of this motion, provided that it's in the report. The committee should make recommendations that the government may use to better reflect and the enshrined rights and freedoms in the Constitution, acts, including the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And then the petition E-411 that she talks about basically is a letter that basically says that all the acts of terrorism that are happening don't reflect what Islam's really about. So she's saying that they're extremists and that it doesn't reflect the religion of Islam. So that's what 411 would say. So then when I go and read sections of the Constitution, our Criminal Code of Canada, and our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and compare the two, so the Constitution of Canada incorporates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Section 2 of the Charter grants to everyone, among other things, freedom of conscience and religion, and freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media. Our criminal code that I mentioned last time, sections 318, 319, and 320, forbid hate propaganda, meaning any writing, sign, or visible presentation that advocates or promotes genocide, or the communication of which by any person. And then our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, section 15, every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, and in particular without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. So when I read the two together, Canada already has in place everything that M-102 is asking for, except for it includes Islamophobia, which isn't a defined term. And basically what it does is it's creating more of a divide than bringing people together. It's turning Canadians who already, aren't people that discriminate into people that are hateful, induce fear, discriminate, we're racist, and we have no right to be concerned when acts of violence happen in our country. So to me, it's creating the opposite effect. So that in a nutshell.
How did this?
It is.
Yeah. How did this all come about, Audrey? I mean, what motivated anyone to write such a motion?
Well, I know, right? The NDP last year actually tried to push through a similar motion, but it wasn't even really looked at. But what happened, there was a bombing in a mosque in Quebec just in March, around the same time that this motion was being put in like being talked about in Congress. And it passed with flying colors. Not flying colors. It was something like 91 to 100, and I'm not even going to guess. But it was passed as a motion. And I think it was passed because people were emotionally charged over something that happened in Quebec. A mosque was blown up and 6 people were killed, and it's horrible, right? All of Canada, not just, you know, Muslims, but all of Canada was shocked by it and hurt by it and wanted to help. The motion makes it look like, you know, we could care less.
Well, I mean, I just find it interesting that any government, I mean, and Canada's not the only place going through this, but here in the States, we've got some stuff going on that we're not happy about regarding the whole Muslim thing. But overall, what do you think the response is from the people in Canada that you've talked to? What is their response to this motion, and what can be done?
Well, it's interesting because the day that the motion was passed, I was just like, wow, I was numb. So to get my head out of it, I actually went to the mall and just to not even think about it anymore. And as I was walking around in the mall, it was interesting because I started to overhear conversations, and people were saying like, this is ridiculous. You know, we don't hate Muslims. You know, I can't believe it got passed, all this stuff, right? Like it's incredible. People are waking up. I think if anything, this motion is starting to wake people up. What can be done about it? We have to stand up and say no. We have to make everyone aware that M-103 is already covered in our Constitution, and this is an unfair motion because it, like I keep saying, it makes us out to be something we're not. We don't hate Muslims. We're concerned over, you know, acts of violence and terrorism that are starting to happen in our country, as we should be. We have every right to be.
Well, absolutely. You definitely have every right to be. And I mean, how large has your Muslim community become up there?
You know what? I'm not even sure. I don't know what our Muslim community is like up here.
So have you seen acts of terror and things happening over the course of, let's say, the last 6 months?
There's reports that, you know, the mainstream media won't report on. So in our, you know, West Edmonton Mall, which is a famous mall in Canada, there was acts of, in our water park, sexual, people were groping, Muslims were groping girls in our water park, and nothing was really reported on it, and nothing was really done. And in fact, our CBC, one of our news broadcasters, had the audacity, I think it was CBC, I could be wrong, but I think it was, had the audacity to put out an article asking if those who commit acts of sexual misconduct should be named.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
That's how far things go like that. Now I know Brad was going to join us. Something must have happened, so he can't be with us. But he was going to talk a little bit about what effects that he felt this has to the children of Canada and the next generation. How about you? What are your thoughts on that? What does this mean for the youth in Canada, and what happens moving forward?
Well, I think, you know, we're just starting to see our freedom of speech being taken away, for one. And a lot of people are concerned that that's going to bring in Sharia law or blasphemy laws. And I mean, anyone who has kids, I mean, imagine them now going to school, especially the girls. You know, imagine them going to school. And if they are from a Christian home and they do not want to wear the hijab, or they don't want to bow and pray with their Muslim classmates, I mean, they're going to be tormented, right? They're going to be bullied. They're going to be, I mean, already in our schools, there's sexual assaults happening already in our schools. And, you know, the girls are made more a victim before and after than the perpetrators. And I mean, that's what's already happening. So what's going to happen moving forward for our kids going, you know, in the future? It's, I mean, they're not going to be able to say anything because of our freedom of speech. Even things like, you know, in the cafeterias, you know, they have to have halal meat. Well, what if you don't want to eat halal meat, right? We have, you know, the States does have no-go zones, and places where Muslims have taken over communities, like in Dearborn, Michigan. So, you know, we haven't seen so much of that here yet, but what about the kids living in those communities? They're going to be either forced to go to those schools and adhere to Sharia law or Islam, the rules under Islam, or be forced out, kicked out. Those families will be kicked out. I know Brad really wanted to talk about things like female genital mutilation, which is horrific. Child brides. So they can marry as young as 6 and consummate at age 9. It's ridiculous. Women.
I tell you, Audrey, you're going to be blown away by this. I interviewed Josh Tolley yesterday, and the topic was an interview that he had done, and this is what happens, folks, under Sharia law. There was an American family. They were living, I believe it was in Saudi Arabia. The husband was working over there. They lived on a compound. On the compound that they lived in, they still had to adhere to some Sharia law, but there were Muslims in the compound as well as Americans. So one day, out with her mother to go swimming in the pool. She was wearing a one-piece bathing suit. Well, immediately the cat calls started and the men were harassing her. And so she went to get out of the pool, and one of the men drowned. He just somehow. So they pulled him out and they got him out there on the deck. And the mother of this young girl knew CPR. So she went over and began giving this man CPR, but she couldn't give him mouth to mouth because I guess that's I don't know. There's something in Sharia law about that for men and women. So she had to teach a man there how to give this guy mouth to mouth. So they take the guy off to go to the clinic. The daughter and the mother go with him, and she's still in her one-piece bathing suit. They get in the clinic, and in the clinic, they're more concerned about how do they cover up this girl who's in a one-piece bathing suit, and they leave the guy laying on a table in one of the rooms. Well, he dies. They charge the girl with murder because they said if she wasn't out there in inappropriate clothing, he wouldn't have drowned in the pool. Now, that's the craziness of what's going on. And that is what the fear is for this kind of emotion up there. I am just like you, I suppose, surprised ever, ever got any legs.
Yeah, it wasn't reported much in mainstream media. There was a lot of alternative news trying to bring it out. There was petitions. People, our representatives were asking for petitions to send to them so they could read them in the House of Commons. There were some rallies, but again, that, because it was against, M-103, which cites Islamophobia, those that were at the rallies were now haters, basically Islamophobic. It's ridiculous. It's a phobia is an irrational fear of something. So, okay, so if this now becomes a bill and then moves into law, is that an irrational fear? That's a real fear. So, I don't know. This whole thing is crazy, and it affects everybody. Everybody. In so many ways. I can't.
Well, it affects, yeah, I mean, it affects us on this side of the border as well. I mean, it really does. I don't see in Canada especially. I mean, you guys are traditionally a very warm nation when it comes to immigrants or people seeking asylum. But now, I mean, you've just got this huge influx of Muslims. You've got a prime minister who's definitely around them. I mean, I'm astounded when I watch the border crossings in upstate New York, and the people just walk right into the arms of your immigration, and they take them away because they know that they'll be granted asylum in Canada. They know it. Now, the problem, folks, becomes that how do you know which of these Muslims are just hardworking families trying to make a new life and get better themselves from those extremists? I mean, isn't that the case up there?
Absolutely. Within Islam, there's different sects, right? And so each sect believes that they're following the true orthodox religion of Islam. And those that aren't, they basically kill them. That's what the Sunnis and the Shiites are doing right now. So, okay, so that's a real legitimate fear and concern. So those coming over our borders, especially right now, who say they're fleeing America, well, what are they fleeing? Like, what are they scared of? Freedom? Like being free? Like, really, right? So they're coming over our borders, and because we don't know who they follow, right? The people over in Manitoba are concerned, and there is some fear. And one of our representatives, Michelle Rempel, actually stood up in the House of Commons and asked Trudeau on one of the days he decided to show up in the House of Commons, asked him what, basically said that, it's not that we don't want them over here, it's that we don't have the resources to bring them over, to house them, and all of that, and that there's a real fear. And the Prime Minister basically just stood up and flipped it on her and basically said her and the Conservative Party is the one spreading the fear.
It's always blame it on the Conservatives. Every time something goes on, blame it on the Conservatives. I mean, if you ask those Muslims why are they fleeing the United States, they'd say because of Donald Trump. And if they're afraid of Donald Trump or immigration, the reason they're afraid of that is because maybe they're not here legally. Those are the issues. And this whole thing about, I agree with you, Audrey, that this motion 103 really incites. It's like throwing gasoline on an open flame. It really is. So, I mean, now the next step for M-103 is what? It'll get moved. They'll try and move it into becoming a bill.
Well, Some say yes, some say no. Basically, we're just waiting and see. They have 250 days to come up with some sort of plan forward to see if there really is, this hate going on. And, Khalid herself said that, within her petition, admits that there's extremism and terrorist stuff happening. So if that doesn't represent Islam, okay, fair enough. But those coming over, don't we have a right to be concerned about that? Don't we have a right to ask our prime minister to please shut our borders until we can figure out a way to properly vet and bring them in without exasperating our resources? Our border crosser patrol people, oh my goodness, right? They're coming over. What are they supposed to do, right?
Well, I know, but the interesting thing is there were some pictures that I saw on the internet where your immigration, or whatever you call it in Canada, your border patrol, they were actually carrying some of the belongings for these people as they walked down the road. Which is from a human standpoint, I understand that, but it was just interesting to see, and it's like, wow. Oh, Canada, what has happened? I guess the moral of the story for Canada is people in Canada need to stand up and have their voices heard. Is that right?
They do. They just need to be aware of what's going on. I'm not a political person. I hate politics. Let me tell you, I do not like politics, but I am more aware geopolitically and even what's going on in the States. Because I chose to keep myself aware of what's happening around me and to follow Bible prophecy. So me as a Canadian never thought I would have to be concerned about my own country. Therefore, I didn't really pay attention to what was going on in my country. I'm guilty. I am guilty of not standing up where I needed to, not voting when I needed to. So, lesson learned. I want, Americans and Canadians to start becoming aware of what's going on around you, what's going on in the world, and how that all connects to Bible prophecy, and to look at what's happening in Canada, because what's happening in Canada will happen to you.
Amen to that, Audrey. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We're at the top of the hour now. Folks, if anything, start praying for Canada. Pray that for America, for Canada, pray, just pray. Audrey is so correct in what she's saying. She's so astute. And when she says she's up on geopolitical issues, believe me, she is. Audrey has been to several of the Hear the Watchman conferences with her husband. Her husband, Brian, took wonderful pictures of the last conference in Dallas, Texas. And we're going to see the both of them in Boise, Idaho, August 18th through the 21st at the conference there. It's going to be an amazing event, folks. There's actually a Messianic rabbi coming all the way to speak at this conference. We have Pastor Paul Begley, L.A. Marzulli, Michael Boldea, Josh Tolley, Pastor Carl Gallups. The list goes on. It's going to be an amazing experience. And we're just so grateful, Audrey, to have you and Brian attending that conference again and going up to witness the total eclipse of the sun with us. Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I am actually looking forward to that. I love little cool adventures and stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You guys going to drive down to this conference, or are you going to fly?
I think we're going to try and drive this time because it's close enough that we can this time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful drive. That's for sure. Well, listen, folks, thank you, Audrey, again, so much for joining us. Folks, don't be part of the sheeple, be part of the people. Get your ears and your eyes open. Listen to folks like Audrey and the other people that we have here on the Watchmen's Report. And until the next time, God bless each and every one of you, and have a wonderful day.